Yes, so can I have your attention? So we will be studying validity today. This is the last section which is left, and after we cover validity, I have prepared some revision questions for you, so I will be taking a quiz. Please come in. So there are various, firstly, do you guys remember what is validity? I had already explained what is validity before. What is the definition of validity? Whether the test measures what it is supposed to measure. So if the test is on intelligence, it should have questions on intelligence. It should not have questions assessing personality traits, right? So there are various ways through which we can establish validity. One way of establishing validity is called face validity. This is the most basic way of establishing validity. This is generally done by experts. So in this, what they are going to do is, experts are going to have a look at the entire test, and through their opinion, they will judge whether the test measures what it is supposed to measure, right? So if, say, you are experts, you will go through a test and you will read all the items and you will try to see whether all the items are consistent with the objective of the test. Through that, we establish face validity, right? Doesn't require many ways of computing it. It is comparatively simpler. Second aspect of validity is content validity. This is also established by subject matter experts. In content validity, we are trying to see whether the test measures the entire content of the objective. For example, if I have to say measure your mathematical ability, right? So can I just measure your mathematical ability by including only algebra questions? In mathematics, you have algebra, you have geometry, you have calculus. What else do you have? Arithmetic progression or whatever, right? So you will have to include questions on everything and make sure that the entire content is covered. If I have to say establish validity of emotional intelligence, right? I know there are 4 dimensions to emotional intelligence: perceiving emotions, perceiving your own emotion, perceiving other people's emotions, managing your own emotions, managing other people's emotions, right? So I have to make sure that the test has equal number of items to measure all the dimensions. The entire content of the construct is being captured by the questionnaire, right? So seeing whether the entire content is there is called content validity, and subject matter experts are going to establish it. Now we have something called convergent validity. So with these kinds of validity, like convergent validity and divergent validity, we need to do more complicated calculations which requires us to use mathematical formulas, right? In convergent validity, what are we trying to establish? We are trying to establish whether the test measures what it is supposed to measure by correlating it with another test that measures a similar construct. For example, I have created an intelligence test, right? And I want to see whether the intelligence test that I have created is good enough, right? What will I do? I will collect data on my intelligence test, which I will say I2 is the new test that I have made. Then I will collect the data from, say, pre-established test, pre-established intelligence test, or your test on any mental competence. Let me label it as I1. Then I will calculate a correlation between the two. So what am I trying to do? I am trying to converge two constructs or two different things together to see whether there is high correlation between the two. So if the correlation is high, say 0.8, example hai, then I can say that the test of intelligence that I have prepared is actually assessing intelligence, because the previous test that was designed to measure intelligence, उसके साथ इसका positive correlation है. इसका validity already established होगा. We know that this test is studying intelligence. So if I correlate with my new test, I can establish that this is also measuring the same construct. We can take some other example. Say I want to see whether you guys are satisfied with your jobs or not, right? So there is a job satisfaction scale that I have used. I want to establish whether this is measuring what it is supposed to measure or not. So I take a very similar concept, say job engagement. People who are engaged are likely to be satisfied. People who are satisfied are likely to be engaged. It is a similar concept. It is not a very different concept. I will try to compute correlation between the two. If the correlation is positive and is high, say 0.6, I can say it is measuring what it is supposed to measure, right? Now coming to divergent validity. Here I was calculating correlation between two similar tests or two similar constructs. In divergent validity, I will try to correlate two different constructs to make sure that the test is different from an earlier measure. For example, I have my math ability, right, and emotional intelligence. What should be the correlation between the two? Not necessarily. Negative relationship would mean that as math ability goes up, emotional intelligence is going down. It can be unrelated. You can even say the correlation is 0 or say 0.1, very little. But saying that it has negative relationship would mean that there is an inverse relationship. And we cannot say whether people who are good at math or bad at math have any kinds of emotional intelligence related to it. They are two different constructs. I will give you some more examples. For example, I am giving you another example for face validity. Okay. A personality scale that measures emotional intelligence should have questions about self-awareness and empathy. It should not have questions on math and chemistry, right? Coming to content validity. If suppose I am conducting SAT and I have to ensure that the content validity of the maths portion is good, then I have to ensure that it has questions on geometry, algebra, arithmetic, calculus, and many others. In convergent validity, since we are measuring the similar constructs, the correlation should be high. In divergent validity, since we are measuring two different constructs, construct 1 and construct 2, the correlation should be low. Okay. Now we will move on to another section of validity, which is called criterion related validity. In criterion related validity, we have two kinds of validities. concurrent and predictive. Why are these called criterion related validity?
Maybe because there is a certain criteria that the person needs to adhere whether it happens at
Yes. So here we have two criterias. Basically what we are trying to do here, we are trying to see whether the test that we have prepared can be used to match a criteria, right? So we have two kinds of validity, concurrent and predictive. So in concurrent validity, I am trying to see whether the test that I have prepared can help us measure or see whether it can meet a criteria. So suppose that I have to create SAT score for the next year students, right? How can I assure that the validity of the SAT test that I am creating is good or bad? So I have to create, say, SAT 2024. I want to establish validity for this. Do I have any pre-established criteria with which I can compare the validity of this test? Which is that pre-established criteria? Yes. So what can I do? I can give this test to previous year students, see how they are performing, and then base the validity of this test. Coming to predictive validity. Predictive validity is calculated to see whether the test would be good enough to predict a future criterion. For example, I will develop, say I have to develop a hiring test. If I have to say hire software engineers, right? Evaluating everybody in interview might be very costly. I'll have to narrow down the number of people that I want to hire. So I would want to give them a test. But I don't want to give them a random test. I want to make sure that the test that I am giving them should ensure that the people that I am shortlisting on the basis of the test would be the people who will end up performing well in the job. So I am trying to predict a criteria, here criteria being good performance on, that means once they have recruited, they will be performing well. So I have to make sure that the hiring test that I am using should be able to predict good performance on the job. So here the criteria becomes this. How will I do it? So I will administer this test on employees who I know are working for my organization and I have always got good performance. So I'll check the annual performance of people, I'll give them this hiring test and I will see whether people who have performed well every year scored high on this test. If people who perform well are scoring high on this test and people who perform low are scoring low on this test, then I can assume that this can work as a criteria to determine whether a person will perform good or perform bad. So predictive validity of a test helps us predict whether this test is valid for a given criteria. So here I am comparing it with the past test that I already have, and in predictive validity I am trying to predict future performance of people. Therefore, it is predictive and this is concurrent. Right? Has everybody understood the difference between all these validities? Do you have any questions? Discriminative validity is divergent validity. Whether, basically understand the name discriminative, whether it can discriminate between one and the other test. For example, pick up a construct, any construct. Okay. Loneliness. Tell me a construct which is very similar to loneliness. Solitude. So anybody else wants to come up with something else? Otherwise we'll take solitude. Any other concept or construct that is similar to solitude? Sorry, similar to loneliness? Isolation. All these are very similar? Okay. If they are similar, why do I need to have 3 different tests for these 3 different concepts? They are similar but they are not same. So in order to determine the uniqueness of every construct, I need to calculate discriminant validity. They are same, but they are not exactly the same. So this test and this test might measure something similar, because of which they might have some positive correlation. But whether there is some uniqueness in these tests which can help us differentiate one test from the other. Otherwise, all these 3 can be used as substitutes, right? So whenever we are introducing a new concept and we need to establish the fact that this new concept is required, or this has not been tested earlier, or we are trying to propose a new relationship by saying that loneliness will lead to sad mood or negative mood, right? Then can I say that solitude will also lead to negative mood, isolation will also lead to negative mood? Not necessarily. I am trying to see how are these concepts unique, how are these concepts different from a similar concept, through which I can then assert, no, I am studying something different. It's not the same thing that I have studied, or it's not the same test that has already been developed. We need to justify developing a new test as well, right? So that is the reason we calculate discriminant validity, or you can call it divergent validity. We have to see how 2 tests are different instead of seeing how 2 tests are similar. Okay, so we have covered validity now. Do you have, in the last class I had asked you guys to come up with doubts and questions with respect to anything that you have. Did you go through your syllabus of unit 1, 2, 3? Ego, superego and id. Okay. So basically id, superego and ego are structures of personality proposed by Freud. He said that whenever a child is born, the first aspect of personality to develop is id, right? Id works on pleasure principle, which means that the basic motive and desire of id is to meet the demands which are more instinctual. So for a kid, what is going to be instinctual? Gratifying their hunger, right? So if I put a chocolate cake in front of you and immediately you get up and you eat it, what are you operating on? Pleasure principle, wanting to satisfy your instinct. This is what id does. This is the first structure of personality. Second structure of personality is ego. Ego works on reality principle. So what happens if I keep a chocolate cake in front of you? You will not work on your instincts. You will see, okay, there's a class going on. In between the class, I can't hop and start having a cake. You will tell yourself, let me wait for the time the class gets over. After 1 hour, I will eat cake and gratify my need or my demand. So you here are not operating in instincts, you are operating according to reality principle. This is what ego does. The third aspect of personality he called was superego. Superego works on morality principles. So it believes, you can see it as a contrast to id. Id is focusing on pleasure. In contrast, superego focuses on morality, and ego becomes a mediator between the two, and it decides what is realistically possible. So superego would say, I know that you are hungry and you want to have the chocolate cake in front of you, but you should not only wait for the class to get over, but also equally distribute the cake amongst all your classmates, even if that means that you will get a small piece and it will not gratify your need. You are doing what you feel is morally right. Right? So it works on morality principle. This will focus on gratifying your need instantly without caring about social standards, society, or what is realistically possible. Superego is going to cater to moral standards and will tell you what is the ultimate right thing to do, and ego is going to mediate between the two and work on reality principle. So if I ask you, for a healthy individual, which aspect of personality should be the one that is in charge and controlling? What would that be? Reality? Why not superego? Isn't morality better? So if we work on superego, we will become people pleasers, we will try to agree and comply with whatever other people say. We will start doubting ourselves, we will try to keep ourselves, and we will try to meet the utmost moral standards, which might have an impact on us. If we let the id be the controller of our personality, what will happen? It will work on instincts. If you want to kill someone, you will just kill. You will become a psychopath. You feel aggression, you will slap someone. Right? You will become antisocial in a way. So it is only ego that works according to reality and is a pattern of an healthy individual. Right? Yes. Yes. So I would say that, when you feel intense emotions, is it not your id which is making you feel those emotions? But whether you act on your emotions or not, is the ego mediating between the id? Right? Instantly you are sitting and you feel extremely bored and you feel like walking out of my class. That is your id telling you the class is very boring. But the ego will tell the id, shant ho jao, you can't do this. This is not how classroom situation works. Id is also there, ego is also there, superego is also there. It is what mediates or what is in control. There is a book which is a very nice book. It is called Happiness Hypothesis, given by Jonathan Hadid. So the way he pictures id, ego and superego, he says that id is have you ever seen an elephant chariot? चैरियट पता है आपको क्या होता है? क्या बोलते हैं उसको? घोड़ा गाड़ी या हाथी गाड़ी जो बोलते हैं ना उसको, राइट? सो देयर आर हॉर्सेस, देयर इज अ chariot, or say horses, you can say it horses or elephants. There is a chariot man and there is a cart. So the horses become the id they can run wild. The chariot man is the ego, which is controlling the id. And the chariot, which is the load of say passenger, society, morality, etc., becomes your superego. But who is in charge? The charioteer, right? Who is going to decide the direction? Ego. It might listen to the people sitting inside the chariot. It will have to tame the horses, but it is the charioteer which is managing the entire chariot. So here the charioteer is ego in an healthy individual. So revision questions नहीं करने हैं. Psychodynamic approach में what? Id, ego, super ego is a part of the psychodynamic approach. Conscious and unconscious mind. Okay, conscious and unconscious mind, basically there's an iceberg model. So how does an iceberg look like? I am just drawing a random drawing. Imagine this is an iceberg, okay? This is the sea. So this portion, everything is below the sea. This, if I say this is 80%, this is 20%. This is your unconscious mind. This is your conscious mind. Within unconscious and conscious, there is a small layer. This is called preconscious, or you can also call it subconscious, which means it is only 20% of the things that we are actually aware of. The large aspect of your mind is something that you are unaware of altogether. So if I ask you, what is your favorite color? Blue. It is in your conscious mind. What did you eat for breakfast today? Aloo gobi. It is in your conscious mind. Who was the first best friend in school? When was her birthday? It took you a time to recall it? Okay, good. Somebody else, like, who was your best friend? When was her birthday? Okay, so it was not at the top of his mind, it was somewhere in the unconscious mind, but he has not forgotten it either. Reflecting thinking helped him get back to his memory when her birthday was. This information he is drawing from his pre-conscious or subconscious mind. A lot of times, people's innate fears, anxieties, insecurities, feelings that they don't want to accept themselves lie very deep in the unconscious mind. This we are also not aware of. But somehow, this unconscious mind has an ability to affect what we do or how we act when we are in a conscious mind. You like the color blue. Maybe unconsciously it is associated with a happy memory that you don't know. Example hai, right? Somebody is scared of darkness. Consciousness, but why are they scared of dark? Maybe there was some association which was unconscious. So a majority of our mind, all the information, 80% of the feelings, insecurity, deep emotions are what is stored in our unconscious mind that we cannot see and we do not have control over it. Only 20% is in our conscious mind. But can we study unconscious? Or can we not study unconscious at all? Freud says it is study of the unconscious that will lead us to understand a lot of things. So all the techniques that Freud uses, free will, past life regression, this, what was that? Sorry, not free will, free association technique. So all these are focusing on enabling an individual to express their unconscious mind. He says that slips of tongue that we have or errors that we make are manifestations of the unconscious. A lot of times the dreams that we see are manifestations of our unconscious mind. Freud called unconscious mind the royal, he called dreams the royal road to the unconscious mind. Through dreams we can understand what's going on in our unconscious, and by resolving our unconscious mind we can resolve issues that we are presently conscious of. Right? किसका? With unconscious mind. According to psychodynamic theory, yes. Dreams tell you, our dreams are expressions of anxieties and fears and insecurities that you can't express directly. So all these anxiety, fears, emotions which are repressed express themselves through dreams in a symbolic manner, in which they are encoded into symbols, and these symbols then need to be decoded through dream interpretation, and then only you can understand what is going on in the unconscious mind. So see, like, I will not comment on that. I will just say that according to Freud, dreams are meaningful, and according to Freud, dreams are a channel through which our unconscious mind expresses itself through symbols and codes. So if you are seeing a person that you know, doesn't necessarily mean that it is that person you are thinking of or dreaming of, or the emotion is tied to that person, but maybe the happening of the entire dream is trying to say something through the symbol of that individual. Rest, I am not an expert when it comes to dream interpretation. So if you will tell me your dream, I will not be able to do anything with it. Maybe somebody who specializes in psychodynamic approach and dream interpretation will be able to explain it better. But this is mota Freud ka theory of the unconscious mind. Any more questions, or should I take a revision question quiz? Yes, what question you have? Come.
इसका आंसर ये था, अनस्टेबल है ना, पर क्यों था ये नहीं पता, पीछे लिखा है।
हाँ जी सर, नहीं आप बंद कर सकते हैं, हो गया. ओके, यू सिट. He has a question. According to personality definition, which term seems not related? Focus on not related. First, organized. Second, unstable. Third, unique. Fourth, psychophysical system. According to personality definition, which term seems not related? Organized, unstable, unique, and psychophysical system. The answer is unstable. Why? What is the definition of personality? Personality is defined as relatively stable dispositions. Personality is defined by relatively stable dispositions. We know that हमारा जो भी personality है वो stable रहेगा over time. So we can't call personality to be unstable. Calling it unstable means it keeps on changing. Again, we have studied personality is organized. हम cognitive schemas को अपने personal constructs को organize करते हैं. We give a meaning to our experiences, and then that gets integrated in our personality. So it is organized. Everybody is unique, personality is unique. Coming to psychophysical system. What is physical? We studied mind-body relationship. We studied the fact that biology also has a role to play when it comes to our personality. We studied that there are various psychological factors that can influence our personality. So psychophysical symptoms influence our personality. So the only thing that is not related to personality is unstable, because personality are stable dispositions. सर को बोल दो ये रिकॉर्डिंग लोग. Yes sir.